Hello, this is Greg Allison from Galactic Greg's, coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere in the Milky Way galaxy. Tonight we're going to talk about communications of space, communicating space. We engineers and technical people tend in general not to be the best communicators. There are some exceptions. However, it's typically a rule that engineers focus on the technical things and not necessarily the people things, the communications aspects of how you get your ideas across to other people. They're really good with mathematics and engineering design, how things work, but not necessarily telling other people about that. And when it comes to space projects, that's a bit problematic because space projects usually require more than a couple of dollars to make happen, to bring to fruition. So how do technical people, engineers and such, communicate the value of what it is they're trying to do, the proposition that they would like to make to get someone else to promote what they're doing? And this matters whether you're a private company, need to talk to your stakeholders, and so forth. So we've got a presentation that I'm going to show you now that was filmed at the meeting of the Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society on this night, which is 9 May at 7 p.m., just a few hours earlier. And okay, and it's just crossed over into 10 May right now by 4 minutes. Okay, so this presentation was presented by Bart Leahy. He's a professional writer who's worked as a space and technical writer for a couple of decades now, at least a decade and a half. And he also has the dubious distinction of having chaired an International Space Development Conference for the National Space Society for the local chapter of the Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society in 2011. I chaired the 1993 ISDC here also in Huntsville, Alabama. So Bart spoke tonight at the Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society, which I am now president again. And his topic is all about communicating space for various stakeholders from various organizations. The title of his talk is Communicating About Space, Pitfalls, and Priorities. Now, here's the thing. He covers how you communicate if you're doing this for a government agency, if you're doing it for a private company or nonprofit. He covers how you communicate to technical people, workers, how you communicate to who's going to give you the money, be it Congress, be it a shareholder, be it an investor, be it donors. How do you recruit people if you're a nonprofit organization? He covers the gauntlet on this. And so it's a really good talk. It comes from a different angle than a lot of our technical talks that we've had, but it makes it refreshing and quite interesting. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. I'm going to do many other videos on technical topics. And so please bang the bell well, actually first subscribe to my channel, then bang the bell for update notifications. And I've actually got some links to below to some other things that can support this channel. A little bit more on the topic of my other channel, Green Greg's, but it will still help this channel too. So have a look at the links below. And by all means, keep watching. My apologies, I've not put any videos on this channel for over a month now because I've been doing taxes. I've been moving a lot of worms in my other business and trying to do some things with HAL 5. I've been at my day job. Oh, the taxes were horrendous. And it's garden planting season time. So it's like taxes, gardening, and worms, the biggest things going on in my life, and some stuff at work all hit at the same time. And so my posting suffered a bit of late. I will strive to keep more postings coming and do it on a more regular basis here. So I hope you enjoy this video. A lot more to come. Again, subscribe and bang the update notification bell because there's going to be more stuff that you're going to want to see. And oh yes, one final thing. I messed up when I introduced Bart Leahy. I made a mistake. I walked right into the camera, so all you saw was my chest. And when I realized it, the amateur mistake I just made, you can see me back off. So my apologies for that. Yeah, I'm still learning this bit of filming with a tripod. Got a few lessons to learn. I think I just picked that one up, so I hope never to make that mistake again. So again, I apologize for that, but that was part of my introduction to Bart. And oh, by the way, since I was right up on the camera, let me explain. This pen is a pen of the L5 Society, which was a citizens group formed with the objective of disbanding in space at a space colony, space habitat. Pretty ambitious goal, right? But you ever seen a society formed for the specific purpose to disband. I thought that was pretty cool. And yes, I was a member of it. My membership number 4106. And this is the pin for the National Space Society, which the L5 Society and the National Space Institute merged and formed the National Space Society. And this pin here is my X Prize team member pin I got for being a member of an original X Prize team. And my team was my company, the Altitude Research Corporation, which I was president of and really still am, but it's pretty much on a simmer mode right now. And this is another little L5 TITAC type pin. And you can't get those anymore. They're collector's items because the L5 Society has not been here since the 1980s when the two societies merged. In any event, as you might note, I am president of the Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society, one of the few chapters that still retains that in its name, the third such organization that I started way back when. So I've been a long time, lifelong space advocate and an avid gardener, as you can see from my channel, Green Greg. So pardon me if I had to interject with this. I just thought that was kind of crude and wanted to give an apology in advance. Okay, I hope you enjoy this video. Let's lock and load. Hello, I'm Greg Allison. I'm president of the Huntsville, Alabama L5 Society. We're your local chapter of the National Space Society, not to be confused with the National Space Club. We're a grassroots space advocacy organization. Most of you know who we are. I'm speaking to those one or two that may not. And we started here in 1983 in Huntsville, having meetings back in August of that year. And I was a founding president, and I've managed to pass the baton off for the past dozen years, and some have fell back on me recently. But in any event, we do these public programs. We try to have something every month of public interest about space as part of our outreach. And we do have from time to time various other technical projects. We do have a high-altitude liftoff program that developed rockets, and currently that's going on in the home of Stephen Mistakis here. So if you're interested, come see Stephen Mistakis. He goes by Steve. We are developing hybrid rockets and other things. He can tell you about the fun projects there if you want to chat about that. And we've had some conferences and things we've done here in the past. In fact, Bart and I hold the dubious distinction of both having been chairman of International Space Development Conferences, the only two held for the National Space Society here in Huntsville. I chaired the '93 conference, and he chaired the 2011 conference. And he looked worried. Can he remember? I ain't that old yet, Bart. In any event, so the thing is that. Yeah, I swore after I did that I'd never do another conference, and I wound up doing 2 power grid defense conferences, another little activity of our chapter. We do have a power grid defense subcommittee, and the reason we do that is how are we going to get to space if our grid fails? I mean, that's a serious matter. So we want to make sure there's no roadblocks to prevent us from our dreams, and that's one of the things that we're into. So if you want to know about that, come see me on that. And we do have our website, hal5.org. Hopefully most of you can watch that site to see what's coming up in the future for future talks. But Bart and I both served together in other capacities. We've both been involved in the policy committee of the National Space Society in years past. I was chair of the policy committee for some 10 years. And Bart was one of my right-hand guys. He was the chair of my policy generation subcommittee, being the writer and such. Bart has a professional background of writing, and he likes to write about space and technical topics, and he's real good about it, very versed in it. And so he served the policy committee very well, and has done a lot of good things in the area of writing. So with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Barticus, Bart Leahy.
Good evening. Thank you for your patience while we get our technology straightened out. As the man said, I am Bart Leahy. We're here to talk about communicating about space, pitfalls, and priorities. Oh, it works good. Okay, so in the tradition of great speakers everywhere, I'm going to tell you what I tell you, and then tell you what I told you. My background, Greg gave some of it. I do have a technical, we'll do that first. Background, why communications are important for space. Clear communications are important for space. We'll talk about the pitfalls that occur if you're trying to communicate about space, and then some of the priorities to make space communication better. Then I'll tell you what I told you and take questions. Okay, background. Space advocate, as he said. He covered some of my space advocacy background. I've written for the National Space Society, from Mars Foundation, Space Frontier Foundation, Space Foundation, a few others. So I've been at Tennessee Valley Interstellar Workshop which is my current advocacy activity. And as a space writer, in 2006, I moved here to Huntsville to work for Marshall Space Flight Center. I supported the Office of Strategic Analysis and Communication to write papers, conferences, speeches for the program managers of the Ares and Constellation programs. When that was closed down, I did the Surveyor program, and then after that, I did the Space Launch System. I was back writing for Todd May, the program manager. So did a lot of administrative communications, public affairs, that sort of thing. As a space reporter, I've done writing for the National Space Society's magazine, Ad Astra. I've done writing for Space.com, and Space Flight Insider is my most recent activity. So look for me out there, and I'm a space writer, and that would be my background. So when I talk about, say, I speak space, this would be kind of why. So let's jump in. Why are clear communications important for space? We can start with apathy. There's still a lot of apathy out there. The public doesn't always care about space as much as those of us who are in the advocacy community. We don't want puppies falling asleep when we start talking about space. That's bad. We want people to care about what we're doing. And technical communicators can play a vital role in that. Mission success. Does anyone know what this spacecraft is by any chance? They all kind of... Mars Climate Observer, yeah. Mars Climate Orbiter, sorry. Mars Climate Orbiter. 1999, this spacecraft crashed into the planet Mars due to a miscommunication about whether they were going to use US units or metric units, and the thing just barreled into the planet. We want our hardware to work correctly, and that involves, among other things, clear communication. Safety. This is, curious on this one. This is the first flight or attempted flight of the Ariane 5 in 1996. This is also a software issue. The rocket had a 16-digit integer in its software, and they tried to plug a 64-digit integer into that 16-digit field. Bad things happened about a minute and a half into the flight. It went 90 degrees sideways, and that was the result. We want hardware to operate safely, and again, technical communication is important to that. In this case, though it's a software issue, I consider it a technical communication issue because they didn't fully communicate all the impacts and the challenges that would have been involved in transferring Ariane 4 software directly into Ariane 5 without accounting for all the differences. Sensible regulation. The more we get into space, the more the government is going to want to put their paws on it. There's no way around that. But there are ways space advocates, technical communicators, and the space industry as a whole can educate lawmakers to make them better informed and regulate more clearly, make sure that the laws are not going to interfere with our ability to do constructive things in space. They need to be educated again. And of course, all this leads to what the National Space Society's big goal, which is more people living and working in space. The public needs to know what's happening. Experts and lay people alike. So they all need to, if we're going to have more people living out there, it's important that they are educated in what's going on. And technical communication, again, is one of those branches where we can translate between what I call engineerish and English. So what are the pitfalls when this happens? Pitfall number one, assuming space communications are for everybody. This is a little bit of a heresy on my part, and I apologize. We're told that space is supposed to be for everybody, and everybody's supposed to care, and we're all supposed to benefit. Well, I agree, we all benefit, but not everybody cares. So when you're writing for whoever, you're writing a piece of equipment, writing a document, writing any sort of outreach material for an organization, for a space organization, you need to have a specific audience in mind. Anyone heard of the Pareto principle? This is a concept invented by an economist named Vilfredo Pareto, Italian. He basically says that 80% of the consequences come from 20% of the inputs, the 80-20 rule. And what this means is that basically 80% of whatever's happening in your program, your organization, is going to be affected, basically is going to be the result of 20% of the people or 20% of the activity. You're working on the big problems, in other words. So for a communication organization, the primary impact is your communications still should focus on your top 20%, because on that, say you're writing, you really have it in mind, I really want to make sure that all 300 million people in America read this. realistically, maybe 20% or 10% are reading that. And of that 10%, there's going to be the people who are paying for it, and the people who are voting on it. And those are the ones you definitely want to reach. Pitfall number 2, believing that space activities can only be explained one way. I got into a bit of a discussion with a NASA engineer a few years ago because I asked him to do a technical edit of a document I'd written. And I asked him to just make sure it's technically correct. What happened was instead they kind of said, well, they took out all my clearly written prose and put back in the engineerish to make it sound like an engineer had written it. I'm like, well, you're dumbing it down. It's clear, you know, simple does not mean dumbing it down. It means making things clear for, especially if you're working with a non-expert audience. You can use clear language as long as, you know, language that is not as technical. So, for instance, you might be saying soil instead of regolith. You might say rocket instead of launch vehicle. Oops, let's see, back that up. Come on. Fuel instead of propellant, or my favorite, elliptical orbit near the moon instead of near rectilineal halo orbit NRHO.
Oh, come on.
That is the actual orbit for the NASA Gateway. And I still don't know how it looks. Somebody's trying to explain it to me. I'm like, I've got to see the visual because this doesn't help me. Anyone seen this? This was on the internet a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
XKCD.com posted it. It's a very nice graphic of the Saturn V, but what they did is they added captions for in only using the top 1,000 words that people use on a daily basis in the English language. So instead of the Saturn V, you got the upgoer 5. Instead of helium, you got that air that makes you talk funny. So, you know, that's cute, but that's being a little, if we were to do this in NASA or some other company, I'd laugh at you and they think you're talking down to your audience. You don't need to be that simple again, but you have to meet the needs of your audience. You don't want your audience to get lost, and you don't want to, because if you lose them, you've lost hearts and minds. Because again, this talk is aimed at people who are writing about space for people who are not in space or people who are not in your organization. You're having to eventually win hearts and minds or change a mind, something like that. So you need to write clearly to meet your audience's needs. Pitfall number 3, not explaining the benefits of space activities. This is the so what, why should I care? I was working for a, an example from the launch business, first of all. I've got the world's largest launch vehicle. It launches 70 tons of stuff into space. So what, why should I care? Or I've got a reusable launch vehicle that'll launch less, but it'll launch it more times. Why should I care about that? You need to be thinking about, for your audience, whoever your audience is, why should I care about what your widget does? So this would be something simple, because not everybody, some people just won't read the whole document. So you want to maybe summarize your key content, your key messages up front. Things like your functions and capabilities. This rocket will launch 70 tons of stuff into space. What are its benefits, what are its costs, what are its hazards? These are all things you can say up front with minimal acronyms, with minimal jargon, and still get your point across. You can't assume that your audience knows the implications of your message. This applies to engineering and science. I worked for an astronomer a couple years ago, writing a paper about, writing a proposal about a new telescope. And he's talking to me about arc seconds and wavelength sensitivity and stuff I know nothing about because I'm an English major and I don't understand. I said, so I'm getting frustrated, he's getting frustrated with me. What do you mean? Well, don't dumb it down, but make it simpler, make it simpler. So finally he got frustrated with me and said, you know, it helps you see more stuff farther away. I thought, okay, I can use that. Because I'm not writing for another astronomer, I'm writing for a politician up at headquarters who's going to approve his proposal or not. And the stuff that I did, the approval team liked. The stuff that he wrote didn't go over so well. So communication lesson learned. Sometimes you just got to show people the money. Why should they care? I'll get to that in a second. So priorities. This is a formulation I came up with when I was teaching business writing at University of Central Florida. University of Alabama, Huntsville. Sorry, I use You went to UCF. But I taught a semester here at UAH, and I was trying to, whenever I get a new assignment, regardless of who I'm working for, I always work on audience, situation, and outcome. I was trying to beat that into my students' heads to say, these are the things you need to be thinking about. And the WIFMs, anyone know what WIFM is? Go ahead.
What's in it for me?
There you go. What's in it for me? That's what they want to know. So, your audience, you're thinking, when you're writing about it, you have to have a specific audience in mind. I discussed this earlier. And it really, these are things, there's a lot of involved. It's not just a matter of who, but what's their rank, for instance, in an organization. Are they in the organization? Are they outside the organization? What's their relationship to the content? Is it good news? Is it bad news? How many people is this going to affect? How many people are actually going to read it? Is it going to be one? Is it going to be a million? Situations. No matter what circumstances are they receiving the message? Is it going to be dumped 3 p.m. on a Friday, or is it going to be hitting their desks 9 a.m. on a Monday? Is it going to be, again, is it good news? Is it bad news? Is it medium news? And people just don't, it doesn't affect them one way or the other. But under what circumstances are you writing the content? Are there other things involved that might not get people's attention? Or that might cause people to not pay attention to what you're saying? Outcome, how do you want people to react? This could be something simple, like I just want you to learn it. Or if you're writing for a government agency and you're writing a regulation, you want people to comply with it. You might want them to make a decision. Hey boss, I want you to decide, do you want to use this rocket or that rocket? Or you might want them to, you want to do persuasive speech where you're saying, hey boss, I want you to use this rocket. It's all about, all of these factors affect the words you're going to use, the choice of words you're going to use, and the tone you're going to use when you're writing. And with them, again, what's the impact to your audience? So who's communicating in the space business? It's gotten a lot busier in the space business in the past. Actually, let's see, I started working in space in 2006, and I became an advocate in 2001. So just in that, for me, brief time, it's gotten busier. But you can really break it down into roughly 4 categories of organizations that are out there. You've got government agencies, which includes the Department of Defense, and the intelligence agencies. You got the private sector, big arrow, and what they call new space. Academic institutions, so my school, UCF, and nonprofit advocacy organizations like Cal 5 or National Space Society. So what I'm going to do here, run through here for you to kind of crystallize these thoughts for you, is I'm going to walk you through my audience situation outcome for each of these real quick, and that'll hopefully make it have things make more sense. Priorities. So you got NASA again, defense agencies, National Space Science Foundation, FAA, all these federal agencies. When you're communicating, if you're communicating on their behalf, you've got primary audiences in mind. Anyone who's in that line of work want to throw out any thoughts about who they, if you're writing, again, inside or outside your agency, who are some of your audiences? Go ahead.
Congressional hearings and...
Sure.
The hearings, not the audience, but the...
Yeah, no, the Congress,
congressional
right?
folks, yeah.
Sure, it's staffers. Any others? I know they're out there. Well, we've got again, congressional staffers. You've got the media. You've got if you're writing inside your organization, you're military. You might be writing for officers. You might be writing for enlisted personnel. If you're writing within your agency, you might be writing for contractors or civil servants or both. So there's all these different types of audiences. You might be writing for reaching general public. You might be writing for a high school class. You might be writing for preschool. I've seen that happen. Situations, this would be things like, I'm going to a conference and I have to write a paper. Or, let's see, outreach again. NASA has gone to like the Daytona 500 to do outreach. So outreach would be things, congressional testimony, right? We mentioned that. And budget hearings, reports to Congress, reports on the progress of your hardware, right? All that kind of good stuff. And then the preferred outcomes. You've got a proposal, or RFP, that's my first one I should mention. Request for proposal. The government puts out a request for proposal. We want people to propose the best widget they can. We want to make sure that the government gets back compliant proposals that answer the mail, that make sense and answer what they want the proposal to do. Or you might want to, say you're hiring somebody, you're out there hiring new employees, you want to make sure you're hiring the best and brightest who are interested in doing and capable of doing the work. Preferred outcomes, again, then you're looking at getting the compliant proposals, making sure that you're getting contractors who are complying with the regulations that you've put out, or you've hired the best personnel you can. So with them, this would be for the government audience. This is what the writer of the government agency needs to be thinking about. What is in it for their audience members? So for the writing to say to a contractor or another agency, they're going to want to know things like, how does this content affect my schedule or budget? Or how does this, writing an elected official, what does it cost? You're writing to the public, you're writing to a customer, anyone's going to want to know, what's in it for me? What's the good? What's the benefit of your product or service? Is it better, cheaper, faster, more sprinkles? Pick two. Private sector. These are a little different. So you're writing, your audience is going to be who? This is like what we teach back at UAH.
People who want to buy your services.
People want to buy, there you go, customers, right? Customers, that might include the government agencies. You've got, again, potential employees, the media again, teaming partners, situations. If you're writing for a business, who would you be writing for? Or writing to? What sort of situations do you think?
Regulators.
Sorry?
Regulators?
Sure, you might be in a situation where you're wanting to get your rocket approved for launch, and there's a whole very long pile of paper you've got to fill out to the government to prove that your rocket is safe to launch. So that would be a situation where it's launch certification.
Or your customers.
Yeah, again, more customers. So you're selling stuff, you're writing a proposal.
Stockholder.
Sorry?
Stockholder.
Stockholder meeting. You want to know how well are you making money, and how well is your hardware doing. So preferred outcomes, win the proposal, make the stockholders happy, make your employees happy. What's that?
Get approval.
Yep, get approval for your rocket, all these good things. Make sure your customers are using your rocket correctly. And then your WIFMs, if you're a government agency, they're wanting to know are you following the laws and the rules and the regulations. Are you meeting my cost schedule, technology needs? If you're defense and military, of course, they want to know, are you protecting my data correctly? Are you protecting my hardware so it's safe from hostile eyes? And all the customers, again, are going to want to know what's in it for me, what's the benefit, is it safe? That would be something the public is going to be very interested in. Academic institutions, and try to be bipartisan here. But your primary audience is, if you're writing, has anyone had to write on behalf of UAH in a space capacity? One of these things would be writing grant proposals, for example, either to the government or to the National Science Foundation, something like that. People you're looking to get money to fund studies, fund activities that your students can do. You might be writing to the media, showing progress about what you've done. These are the Alumni Association, the administration, showing, again, what you're doing. If you're writing to the alumni, hey, cool, we've done this. That kind of thing. And so situations, that's proposals. Can we discuss that? Bless you. Preferred outcomes, you're wanting to win the proposal. You're wanting to bring in qualified postdocs and other exciting folks. You're wanting to make sure that when you've written documentation for your experiment that's going to go up to the International Space Station, you want to be able to show that the astronauts are using it properly. And with these funding organizations, they want to know how's my money being spent, how your people are they going to assume your students are bright. They want to know how are you actually working, how well are you working with the partner, say the government or with a private sector contractor. If you're writing a proposal, that's usually the management section of your proposal where you're showing this is how we will operate, and you're actually following how you operate. And how you work with this. And then again, where's the WIFM? The WIFM for your audience, if you're an academic institution, what's in it for me? Why should I care about what your research is doing? What is the benefit to me as a taxpayer, as an alumni, as a taxpayer? Finally, nonprofits like NSS, Planetary Society, all these fine folks. Primary audiences, Ronnie, well, who's a primary audience if you're writing for, if you're doing communicating to the public outside your organization?
Typically, I don't want to say general public, because usually we're looking at the taxpayer public.
Okay.
Usually we're trying to influence
Sure.
people who can make big decisions.
Sure, right, decision makers, right. And that would be, under situations, that would be, say, lobbying, or also, going, citizen lobbying, they'll go to NSS, will join other organizations and go to Capitol Hill and say, hey, we'd like you to support X.
I'll caveat that with the other half of our public outreach, especially at the local level, is on the educational side.
Okay, all right, yeah, so your target audience for your programming, right?
Yeah.
Sure. And then also potential members. You want to recruit new members, or you want to bring in new donors, perhaps. And that's under situations. So you've got or you might want to, present programming like some crazy person decided, hey, let's bring in an English major and talk about space. And then your preferred outcomes, you're wanting to make sure that you're bringing in the new members, you're bringing in new donors, you're educating the public. These are all the exciting things that you're thinking about as you're communicating on behalf of a nonprofit or advocacy organization. So your WIFMs, this is going to be pretty much across the board, I think. What are you doing to advance your cause? Your goal is to have more people living and working in outer space. Okay, well, what are you doing with it? How are you going about doing that? What do I get for my money? If I'm a member, do I get benefits? Do I get discounts? What am I getting? So those are the kind of things you're communicating clearly. And the benefits, I'd say I'm an English major who doesn't work with the space business. Why should I care about space? What's the importance to me? This is where you're actually having to really think at a customized level for your audience and say, okay, what interests you? What do you care about? And be able to have a way to tie your mission to what your audience cares about. So I'm at that point where I get to tell you what I told you. The more you do in space, more people you have, more you need clear communications. You need to be able to show that people are excited, that you're doing proper things, you're doing it safely, that you've got an engaged public, and if you've got an educated public, you have a more engaged public. Avoiding the pitfalls, you want to make sure that you're not assuming too much about your audience, that they don't assume that communications are for everyone, that you're not assuming communications are for everyone, that you're not assuming that people know automatically what your benefits are, and that you're not assuming everybody understands your technical jargon. Not everybody understands what an RHO is, for example. And then, of course, you're focusing on your priorities. You want to make sure people have your audience, your situation, and your intended outcome in mind, and you have a WIFM in mind, where you're consciously thinking about why should my audience care about what I am saying right now. Final thoughts, this is kind of my legal disclaimer, where I explain that effective technical communication cannot guarantee effective outcomes. Like, for example, we had a great exchange of emails back and forth to say, do I have the right hardware to connect my computer to the projector? I did, in fact, have the correct hardware. The hardware did, in fact, connect correctly, but it didn't work. So, again, just as a living example of how this actually works. Technical communication is there for providing clarity. It's not there for making sure that the hardware works. That's somebody else's job, like the rocket scientist here. But you're articulating your intentions. You're providing a positive image of your organization. You're delivering your documentation effectively to make sure that everything is read clearly, reads clearly, and people can use it. You want to make sure people understand the value of what you're doing. You want to make sure that you're sharing the right messages with the right people at the right time. It's called strategic communication, and that's basically where you're targeting your audiences. I want to make sure I reach this decision maker and this congressperson and this person's this staffer. You're aiming your targeting your communications to meet so that the right people are getting the message they need to get. And ultimately, you want to make sure you're inspiring people to live and work in outer space, which is kind of why we're all here. So with that, I wish you luck and happy communicating, and I'm happy to take any questions. Sir.
So Bart, in this age of Generation X and subs, we find that Generation X and subs are less likely to join organizations. They're not the joiners that us older folks tend to be. So do you have any new perspectives on how to best reach out and to motivate them to join organizations?
Sure. Actually, I wrote my thesis on reaching out to specific target audiences in space advocacy. That was
Wow, that's right down the alley. What a man.
Right? Unfortunately, I didn't cover, I was targeting women, environmentalists, and minorities. I had not covered
we need that too.
different generations at the time. But I actually, I wrote a space...
Many of us old white guys here, we need to branch out.
There you go, exactly. So I would temper the individuality a little bit and be able to say, here's a way you can contribute on your own. If you don't feel like coming to the meetings, you don't feel like going to the conventions, here's a way you personally can contribute. Like for instance, I've seen people who are plugging into their computers and providing computer time for the SETI program. That's just a fun thing we can do. But there's research that's being done, there's citizen science that's being done, where private citizens can contribute to actual science projects just by collecting data in the field. I'm doing one at actually.
So that's best done at the project and the local level with the grassroots. So see, I've implemented that with all my projects, like the conferences and Halo program, things like that for years back. And so that's a good point. So maybe that means that the large organizations need to get more engaged at the grassroots with projects that can involve these people.
Yes, hands-on. That was, because I remember.
And I've always been a big advocate of that. And a lot of people have a hard time seeing the value.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Hands-on is, that was the big, when I was working at NASA, that was the big thing that fresh out of college students were looking for. They want to be able to get their hands on building stuff, which is why they end up at Steve's garage.
That's how we got Steve here, right?
You got it. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, Bart, I've given a lot of thought, and I want your thoughts on how you do this, because we seem to talk to ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
Amen.
The space community, people who read blogs about space tend to be people who are interested in space.
Sure.
There are a lot of people out there that I think would be interested in the WIFMs.
Yeah, right.
If we could get to them, to let them know these WIFMs exist.
Right.
And you mentioned in your thesis, like reaching environmentalists or whatever. Do you have any thoughts on how that can be effectively done more broadly? Because I think SpaceX seems to do it effectively, but they're about the only ones I've seen that get people excited.
Well, and a lot of it has to be go where your audience is. If your audience is reading Vox or Slate or whatever, then you write articles that relate to current events or activities that people care about, and have that space theme woven in there. You're not going to be able to do with everything. Obviously, some things are a little beyond the pale and not connected. But like environmentalism is a great one. That was the one, a big favorite of mine in my thesis was, okay, you're concerned about the environment. Here are things that you can do, or here are things that the space program is doing to help the environment. Or here are technologies that are coming out of the space program that have helped the environment in some way. Really, it's going where the audience is, and then being able to tie, again, with the WIFM being able to tie the space activity to something that is earthbound that they already care about. Hit me, I can handle it.
Yeah, Bart's tough.
Yes, sir.
What do you think about the relative advantages or disadvantages of having someone with the science and engineering background as opposed to the English background doing the communicating?
Well, it's interesting because I've run into people who are they're science and engineering educated, and they're also just brilliant writers, and I'm glad there aren't that many out there because I'd be unemployed. On the other hand, there's what the scientist and the engineer brings to the table is gravitas and authority that I can't bring as an English major. I can quote and cite scientists and engineers, but they're writing from, I'm actually doing it, and here's how it can be better. And sometimes they need help. Sometimes you reference papers for quite a few NASA engineers, managers over the years. They go to conferences, they need speeches given to Rotary Club or whatever, and they need a speech. So they'd say, I want to talk about this, this, and this. Okay, great. And then I'd sit down and I'd write a speech that included this, this, and this, and I'd put non-space words around it sometimes, just to make sure that it met the audience's needs and met my customers' needs. So it can be done. As far as having the professionals, and I really think the professionals, yes, absolutely need to be out there. Les is a fantastic speaker and writer, by the way, this gentleman here. But not everybody, you're right, not everybody can do it. Yes, sir.
What about the infighting that you see inside the space community? Or, well, let me, not just within the space community, but things like, Richard Shelby having an axe to grind with SpaceX because he's afraid that funding is going to leave Huntsville when SLS is killed. And I'm thinking that there are other projects that can be done in Huntsville that will be more productive than trying to get into a fist fight with SpaceX.
Well, one thing I've discovered in the space business is it's filled with very, very bright people, most of them smarter than me, and they're very good at supporting their ideas, and they're passionate about it. I think that's great. I think we need the diversity. I don't think that's harmful. I think the rhetoric when it gets nasty is harmful. But when my master's thesis, I kind of described technical advocacy as a combination of technical writing, politics, and marketing. Because what you're really doing is trying to win hearts and minds in the political sphere, and you have to do it in a technical field. And that would be the same if you were writing about nuclear power or bioengineering or nanotech. As far as the politics go, I would prefer to see people write from an informed point of view, write ethical discourse. I don't mind the argument that is preferred that it would be written or communicated in an ethical fashion, saying here are the factual things wrong with this proposal. Here's what's right with ours, rather than get into the accusing motives. But I'm naive. Yes, sir.
Advice for people just getting into this field.
Yeah.
Whether it be entry-level career or career change, what would you like to pass on to them?
Oh, great question. I have a blog. First thing I do is recommend people read my blog, because I've got a whole tab about writing. If you're writing about NASA, wanting to write for NASA and you've not done yet, or for writing for the space business in general. Some of the things that I've done that got me where I am now is I volunteered in the space advocacy organization to get familiar with the rhetoric. I did a lot of reading about some of the great books that have been in the space community that have formed space policy and space space policies over the years, like High Frontier or The Case for Mars, there's a book by Paul Spudis on the moon. So there's all the big books that are out there about when you hear all the arguments that he's talking about with people, we need to go to the moon, we need to just go to Mars. There's books out there that have already articulated what the big positions are, and you can read those books for yourself and decide what your own opinions are. But do the reading, meet the people, start volunteering in the business, and get familiar with the technology. Anne here is a former boss of mine, and she knows that I was the keeper of the acronyms at the NASA programs. The Ares program alone had like a 48-page acronym document, just trying to explain all the different ways that NASA labels its hardware. So getting familiar with the hard technology is really, that gives you a leg up, because then you're not asking really fool questions like, what's a turbo pump, which I actually did my first day, so. Any other questions?
You mentioned you help people write things, prepare things.
Yeah.
Do you do that on a contract basis, or how do you?
I do now, yeah. I used to work, because I was a corporate guy for 20 years. I did Disney and Department of Defense and NASA. I worked at Marshall here, and as a contract employee. Now I'm freelance, and I work for I work for large automotive companies, and I work for several space companies, and I do various things for them, proposals, engineering documents, and that's been working with my network. The people who I work with here, they've now scattered out through the industry. It's like, hey, you need a technical writer? We know a guy, So that's really how that's how I paid my bills.
case by case or job by job basis as well as a more general coverage?
Yes, right. I've done like one-offs, proposals, and I've also got long-term contracts. So it depends on the job. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. I must admit I was a bit amiss in the beginning of the program. I forgot to mention this actually is a joint program with Society for Technical Communication. I just got old habits of getting up here and announcing things running. So, pardon me, do we have any members of that society here in our group here today?
Thank you for coming.
Oh, very good. Thank you for coming. Absolutely.